algebra kids, we're back at it. We're going to talk about disjunctions, which is example 3. We just got done talking about conjunctions, the need for conjunctions to overlap, to be just a segment of a line, and we talked about that a little bit, so hopefully that was resonating with you. Disjunctions, I think, are the easier of the two. You don't have to have an overlap or an intersection. They're actually a union of these two inequalities. So if they happen to overlap, that's great, but they don't have to. You will always see the word or. If it's a disjunction, that word will always be present. So circle that word for me. You will always underline that word. You will always see the word or if it's a disjunction. And if you don't see the word or, then you are to make the correct assumption that it's a conjunction. Okay, let's get started with example 3. Clearly we see two different inequalities. We have -4 plus a is greater than 1, or -4 plus a is less than -3. Your first objective is to get a by itself, so we know what to graph. So let's add 4 to each side, and we'll have a is greater than 5, or let's add 4 to each side, a is less than 1. Okay, so let's get this graphed. We need to get at least 1 through 5 on there. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, and then let's start with the first one. A is greater than 5. We're going to do an open circle, arrow to the right. That's all the numbers that are bigger than 5. And then a less than 1, we're going to start at 1, do open circle, arrow to the left. And those are all the numbers that are less than 1. Remember, they don't have to overlap. So the graph that you have here is all I need to see. And if you ever look at that graph, like they only gave you a graph and that's all you saw and they said this is the answer, you would go, hey, that has to be a disjunction. There's no overlap there. So if you see a piece of a segment, like a segment of a line, that's an overlap piece, that must be a conjunction. If you see two rays going in the opposite directions, they don't overlap, then your assumption is this must be a disjunction because they don't have to overlap. So these are the two answers I need to see. I need to see this line, a is greater than 5 or a is less than 1, and then I also need to see the graph. And it doesn't have to overlap. You're absolutely correct. Remember, it's a union. All right, let's flip to the next page. Now, while you're flipping to the next page, go ahead and write for this video lesson, the code word is great white shark. Great white shark. All right, let's get to letter B. All right, we got to get X by itself. Clearly, this is a disjunction because we're using the connector word or. It's clearly a disjunction. So now what we're going to do is we're going to divide each side by 2. And so we have x is less than or equal to 3. Drop down your connector word, and then this time let's divide each side by 3, and we have x is greater than 4. Okay, so one of them is going to have a filled-in circle, and the other one's going to have an open circle, and that's okay. So let's create our graph. We don't need a lot of numbers on here because it's a pretty tight graph. So we're going to do a filled-in circle over the 3, arrow to the left, because those are all the numbers that are smaller than 3. We're going to fill in the circle because it also says equal to. All right, now the 4, we're going to do an open circle, an arrow to the right, because that's the direction of all the numbers that are bigger than 4. And so disjunctions, that's what I need to see, is this line where you have solved for x in each of those inequalities. And I also need to see the graph. And remember, the graph doesn't have to overlap. Do you see how easy this is? It is really, really much simpler than compound or conjunctions. All right, I'm going to leave C for you. I'm going to leave that for you for extra credit. So give it your best shot, solve for R in each, and then graph it for me. All right, bring your questions to class if you have any.